Some of the information items.
Apologize, everybody, but we will go ahead and get started with the May 27th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Waterworks Trustees. We have an agenda before us. The first item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Let me run through that first, which is the minutes of the April 22nd, 2025 Board of Waterworks Trustee meeting, the minutes of the May 13th, 2025 Planning Committee meeting, financial statements, list of payments for April 2025, summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of 50,000, and the next meeting date of June 24, 2025. Is there anything that anybody would like to call out of that consent agenda?
I'll just know, Andrea, that Kate and I wasn't at that committee meeting, but say that was.
Okay.
Strike.
Okay.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 2 is our public comment period, and I'll ask that we move one of our information items from further down later in the meeting up to this point in time, and turn to Graham for some information about the Stowe Foundation.
Yep, and I am joined by Amy Beatty. You all know Amy. We have been working for quite some time on this endeavor, and just as a quick recap, we started this project after Bill Stowe's passing with an idea that we wanted to do something in Waterworks and in the community to further Bill's legacy. And quite honestly, we didn't know what that was. And a lot of things happened, including a pandemic where we were all locked down for a while. And in this case, made us, I think, really clarify our thoughts on this project and what we meant by Bill's legacy. You know, the things that were important to Bill was advocacy for clean water and the environment and education. And we really began to focus in on those things and how can we pay tribute to that at Waterworks Park, in Waterworks and Waterworks Park, but more importantly, further that mission. And we began working with Jordan Weber, who's an internationally renowned artist, went to Hoover High School. He's done work literally all over the world, environmental justice and social justice type of pieces. And Jordan was thrilled to join our project and came up with a concept for a piece of art to be installed in Des Moines Waterworks Park. And the beauty of this piece of art is that it functions as an outdoor classroom. And the idea being that art will draw people to it. And while they're there, we're going to, I overuse this little phrase, but we're going to trick them into learning while they're there. And so whether there are people biking through the park or walking through the park or enjoying the crabapple blossoms or going to a concert or what have you, they will be able to stop by and there'll be this learning opportunity that I'll explain in a minute. But also it will function as a gathering space for students. So the students that come to Des Moines Waterworks Park, part of tours, part of summer programs, other educational, it's going to be a place where they can gather. So I'll have Caitlin pull up this video. The video will show you as you enter down this walkway, you'll see there's an opportunity there for learning and what's on those boards is yet to be decided. We're working on those, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you can start that video, Caitlin, you'll come down this walkway leading from the Rouen connector on a gravel walk there, so that will discourage skateboarders, but also beauty. This stone structure that you see, it's open on this side, is inspired by our gallery system. So imagine the pipes in the gallery system. The stones will be a natural material, a limestone, going from larger structure, larger boulders on the bottom to an aggregate at the top. You see seating around the edges for students to gather and to learn. Those insets that you see in the stainless steel are actually the shape of the Raccoon River, and water will trickle down those. The plantings all around what is this structure is called water curia being a meeting space, are all natural plantings. And the plantings that surround water curia and those planters the planting that's in the middle, the trophy or the chalice that's in the middle, are to teach people a little bit about what Iowa looked like before we all came and changed it into farmland. That lighting halo LED lights will make it glow in the evenings, and then as you come down Fluor Drive in a rather spectacular way, and again drawing people in. Those cedars that you see that are planted around the front of it will provide shading, but also are natural trees to Iowa and have special significance to Native American people who use the trees in a lot of different ways. But those trees, incidentally, thanks to what Jessica's been working on, will also be used to beautify their beer garden structures, so that there'll be a meeting, if you will, between the water curia and the beer garden. If you can switch to those PDFs, Caitlin, that I gave you, this will give you a little bit of an idea of where we're going to place water curia. As I say, it's going to lie between Grays Lake and the Lorenzo Amphitheater. Sorry about that. Right as you come out of the Ruan connector. So in this, you can see water curia there being that circle right off of Fluor Drive. Lorenzo Amphitheaters to the left, the Ruan connector. It's a really great location, because it'll be beautiful as you come down to Fluor Drive. We like to say this is the first art piece you'll see as you enter Des Moines. But also from a student standpoint, buses will be able to come in, students will be able to load and unload safely away from the parking lot, but also have access. It's a flat and obviously an accessible spot. We also like this spot because if students are gathered there and should there be a weather incident or some other reason, they could evacuate to this building and congregate in the atrium. Thanks to the building of the Lorenzo Amphitheater, there are restrooms nearby and other things. So the location is really ideal, we think. And Kaylee, we just kind of flip through these next ones. You can kind of see here some stills that you've already seen, but there are those cedars on the outside and some ideas of what it might look like in the twilight hours. But this project, as you know, has taken us quite a long time to get to this point. We have a few asks out there. It's around about a $2 million project. We're sitting right now at about 1.8, and our hope is to break ground this summer and have water curia open, have an event to open it up on Earth Day in April 2026, and then available for the school year that follows. We're really thrilled about this, and as I say, back to this walkway, this took a lot of thinking, but those panels, we're working with the School of Education at Drake and others, University of Iowa and others, to come up the verbiage on that. But that's going to be historical type things that you could learn. Maybe it's about the gallery system, maybe about threat store water systems, things that have gone on in this area. And then yet to be developed, and we hope would be developed over time, would be other learning modules in and around water curia. And as we've talked about, Andrea, and worked with the Park Foundation, the hope is that these types of modules that are developed are something then that can be replicated throughout the park as people walk through. Because I really do think this is a kickstart, if you will, of learning in the park, and that tie to environmental and water education. And I'll just end with this. Oh, and I'll end with one thing, and then it's coincidental that today I received my copy of this book, which is called Sea of Grass. It's by Dave Haig and Josephine McCarty. They're both journalists, work for the Minneapolis Star Tribune, and they've been working on this book for quite some time. And it's about America's prairies, and there's a chapter that's dedicated to Des Moines Waterworks water fight. and talks a lot about Bill Stowe and that period of time where we fought water. And I literally got this book today as a coincidence, so quick went to chapter 8. And I told Amy as I came in, they handled it well. I think they presented the thing well. I thought that was kind of coincidental that we're here at the Stowe Foundation talking about furthering Bill's legacy. This book came out today that talked about that. I'll stop talking. Amy, is there anything that I forgot?
No, other than the timeline for your next meeting, we're hoping, Ted and John, I mean, I was talking before the meeting, hoping to have the plans and site plan and any other documentation that you need to approve, as well as the contract with the Moines Waterworks on the June agenda is what we're aiming for. There is a possibility that it would get kicked over to July, but hoping for June. And the agreement would be similar to what you have approved before with Lawrence and Amphitheater or other projects that are in Des Moines Waterworks Park. So it won't be anything that is not, that you haven't seen before, or something similar to what you've seen before, so.
Including the fact that the Stowe Foundation will fund an endowment, I don't know if that's the right word, Ted, but a fund for maintenance of water curia. So if something happens to it, ongoing maintenance, we understand, and that's part of that agreement, that fund is established before we break ground.
And Newman Brothers is working on putting those numbers together, and those will be in the contract once I get them.
Because inevitably things are going to break. I mean, the water feature has a small water pump that may fail from time to time, like those types of things. And so it's only fair that there be a fund there, and that we fund that before we break ground. And the only other thing I'll say about fundraising is the next piece of this that we will unveil here shortly is a small donor, individual donor type of program, and welcome anyone that wanted to participate in that, and then we unroll that to participate in that. The things that we're going to continue to fund, not only to build this, but that endowment for maintenance, but funding that ongoing educational component is something that we're going to do at the Stowe Foundation, and those individual contributions that we get are going to go a long way in helping us with that.
And it's part of that, it's part of the education piece. Graham mentioned that Drake University is going to be working with it on those educational panels, but they are in the middle of, have completed an elementary school education curriculum for 5th graders, as well as a middle school curriculum this year. And then the next 2 years, they're going to be working on a physics and just a general science curriculum for the high school level. And those have already been tested or already being tested within the public schools. And we have some private schools that are interested in going to be implementing the elementary and middle school education curriculum next year. So we're getting some excitement in terms of the educational piece in the curriculum, which William would be really excited about. So
and those partnerships, I get really, and Amy gets really excited about. I mean, the fact that we can build water curia and it's going to be this beautiful addition to the park and this gathering spot is a wonderful thing. But these educational partnerships, I think the opportunities there are immense. I mean, we continue to talk about with the Park Foundation and others about, an annual or ongoing events where we bring people into the park to talk about these issues and continue to push forward on those things. And if we can fund our organization the way that we want to, so that we can continue not only to develop informal curriculum around water curia, but curriculum that we send out to students, whether they ever come to Waterworks Park or not, that would really be meaningful. And I think Bill will be very happy with that piece. So that's a lot. Again, just to recap, we'll come back to you hopefully in June, it might be July with that agreement. And that's when the board actually has to take a formal action. But I didn't think it would be fair to bring all of that to the board in one meeting. I thought it would be fair to see where we are. And that way, when it comes back to you, you don't have to see this big. That's already in mind. Any thoughts or questions?
How committed are you to cedar trees?
That's a funny comment. I wonder why you asked.
I'm just, spend a lot of time cutting down cedar trees.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've gone through a lot of different trees there. And let me tell you what we like, and I think we're open to ideas. What we do like about those is the ability to kind of cut them, the bottom parts of them, so that you can see in the bottom, but yet it still provides some privacy. One of the concerns about some of the other plantings we had is it almost made water carrier too private, where maybe bad things could happen in there. And so to be able to kind of trim them at the bottom, but then if there's something, if there's the same type of planting being used over at the beer garden, you might actually want them to grow low to hide some of the bottom parts of that. So there was some flexibility in that particular planting. But that's really as far as I'm gonna advocate for cedars. I mean, it's just, other than the fact it was natural, so it did go with
Say
everything
they were
else.
native to Iowa, which was the other thing that was very important to Jordan, and he has been in conversation with Jessica on those things too. So we've gone through various trees, but this is where they have landed at this point.
Sure.
And the one other thing I'll add to that, Andrea, is that we have involved Jessica in this, thanks to Ted's leadership, to make sure that she feels that everything that's in there is going to be easily maintained by the waterworks staff.
That's great.
And I think there'll be some experimentation that has to be done about those other plantings that are around there, especially the plantings that go in that trophy in the middle. That could be kind of difficult depending on light and water and that sort of thing. And that may take a little while to figure out what exactly works well in the spots. And that still meets that need of what's native.
Great. Any other questions?
The preview of the contracts will be owned by the foundation.
No, it'll be owned by Waterworks Park. No, Waterworks, I'm sorry.
So it'll
And
be subject to public letting.
No,
No.
we vetted that early on in the process, and John, I guess you can describe it.
If we're gonna rely on donated funds, we can rely on a contractor identified by the donor.
And we've been working with Newman Brothers as we like.
yeah, in a way, and maybe John will correct me on the legal portion of this. I mean, the Stowe Foundation will build it and gift it to Des Moines Waterworks. And then Des Moines Waterworks will operate it much like it does the Williamson Amphitheater. You know, there's one number where you call, and if you want to have your wedding at the Water Curie, you could, and you schedule it the same way you do this. And the Stowe Foundation won't have any part of that. Our part is just helping maintain it and continue to think about the education of it.
Well, we appreciate, like you said, bringing this to us today, so we can have that preview and for when we do review the contract and kind of get into the details of it, we understand what we're talking about and the extent of what you guys have put together here. I know it's been a long time coming, and it's interesting to see all the different renditions, but I think where you're landing is something that is pretty extraordinary with how thought out the gallery system, the rivers, the privacy, security, lighting, and all of it. So we'll continue to see whether or not we hear from you again in June or July, and leave it to staff to work through those details with you all as we prepare that agreement.
Thanks, Amy.
You next month.
If there are no other items from the public, we will move on to item 3A. Okay. 3A is the asphalt concrete surface patch contract for 2025-2026.
Andrew, every year we did a contract for a contractor to provide asphalt and place that asphalt to patch our places in the street that we excavated and needed to be restored with asphalt. You see the bids there. There's a number in there for previous year, 322,000. The bids came in, they look a little lower, but actually the quantities are a little less, just based on our experience. We reduced the quantities. We take the previous year's quantities and extend them. It's very close. It's about a 2% increase. So very good bids. And we would recommend that the board award the contract for asphalt concrete surface patches to Iowa Contracting.
Can I have a motion to award the asphalt concrete surface patch contract for 2025-2026 to Iowa Contracting Inc. in the amount of $270,000?
So
Second.
there any questions or discussions on this item?
How is the volume handled in this, like a range?
We give them an anticipated volume, and they give us a bid, per square foot or per square yard. Now, I don't remember, actually, it's in tons of asphalt that are in place. And, as long as it's within a certain range of what we estimated, then they have to put that price. And that's why we adjusted periodically, that just kind of match the, something the trend with average or whatever it is.
Presumably that doesn't fluctuate on year over year, there's just events.
That's right. And of course, we can have an anomalous year, but we track it year over year, and just kind of try to shoot for the average, and usually we're pretty close. I'm not aware that we've ever had a situation where we had to pay differently. We've had some situations where we had a huge patch of improvements that it's like, hey, this is so much, can we get a better deal? Sometimes we can, but it's just based on our average usage.
Any other questions or comments? So we have a motion and a second, to award the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item 3B is the concrete contract for 2025-2026.
Andrea, similarly, we hire a contractor every year to provide our ready mix concrete. The difference here is though that the asphalt, the contractor also places that. In this case, our crews actually place the concrete. We have concrete workers who pour the concrete once it arrives. You can see there the comparison between last year's contract and this year's, and in this case, all the quantities remained the same again for this year. There is a little bit of an increase year over year here, a little over 7% increase, but we think that that's an appropriate bid. I also like to point out that for many years now, we have been using the city of Moines mobile batch truck. They have a truck that can come out and pour very small pours for us. So if we have a very small amount of concrete that we need, they can come out for $160 cubic yard. They'll make concrete for us on the spot. We plan to continue to use them for those small pours, but we would ask the board to award the contract for providing ready mix concrete to CPI Ready Mix again this year.
We have a motion to award the 2025-2026 concrete contract to CTI Ready Mix in the amount of $338,500.
Second.
Do we have a contract then with the city that locks us into using them for the 2025-2026 season at that 160 value?
That's the rate they give us. I don't know that we have a contract with them, but they give us an annual rate, whatever amount of concrete. I don't know, Jenny, do you know if we have an actual contract?
We do not.
They just give us the price, and if it's better than we can get, we use them. It's, they think we get about holding that price for year over year.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3C is the request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 to professional services agreement with Vinstra and Kim Inc. for the 2024 Northeast Booster Station.
Andrea, back in January of last year, the board authorized us to execute a professional services agreement with V&K for design of the Northeast Booster Station. And then fairly recently, we did another, we amended that to revise that design, basically to remove the facilities associated with Bond Grant. You'll remember that discussion. Now we're coming back with a second amendment to that contract. We'd like to add bidding and construction services to that professional services agreement. So staff has negotiated a price with V&K $117,925 to provide bidding and construction services. So they'll review shop drawings, help us with the bidding, help us with inspecting construction, creating as-built drawings, that kind of thing. And we're here requesting authorization for me to execute that second amendment with V&K.
Can I have a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 in the amount of $117,925 to the professional services agreement with Beachstrand Chem Inc. for the 2024 Northeast Booster Station?
So
Second.
Any discussion here?
I just have a question where we are on discussions with on grant, on cost sharing.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we sent them a letter offering a kind of a different path where they would basically lease capacity from us in the existing booster station until this one is constructed, and in this booster station, once it is constructed, they just lease capacity that we would have, and the understanding that they're gonna have their new plant online, and they won't need it anymore by the time we actually need all the capacity. And to my knowledge, we haven't heard back. So it's been a couple of weeks, they've had that, and so here, before too long, we'll have to reach out to them. To see what they-
We asked for a response of May 31st, by May 31st. Yeah, and I did speak with the mayor of Bondurant in DC and reviewed what the proposal was. We'll see what they say.
What?
We'll see,
Yeah.
it was a positive conversation.
John, I mean, we've been going back and forth on this topic issue for a while. And oftentimes it leads to no response. You know, we don't have the time to wait to move forward with this. What legal, I don't want to say recourse, because I don't think I'm looking for recourse, but if we've just put them in the position where they're no longer a part of it and their only option is to lease from us, how do we move forward?
I think it might be most appropriate to talk about that in the closed session.
True.
As it requires legal advice,
You're
regarding interpretation of the master purchase capacity agreement and then related issues to that. So I'd be certainly willing to, at a future board meeting, if you want to schedule that, I think that would be appropriate to go over in closed session.
So we're supposed to hear from them by May 31st. Could we put that on the June agenda?
Yes.
This is an issue that's really concerning for me because I am concerned that if nothing happens, that we could get to the point where there are issues with them having water. And I want it to be very clear and very, a really good paper trail on what's going on here. So that we are not put in that position. So.
Any other questions or comments on item 3C?
Lindsay, is there a reason why we're not doing this in-house?
Well,
Construction review.
yeah, we usually will do like water main replacement and things like that, but it's just really staffy, you know. So, B&K did the design of this booster station, it's over in, you know, by Facebook and Altoona, so it would be a lot just to, you know, drive out there and things like that. And it's gonna have quite a few submittals because it's a bigger project.
So when we first envisioned the scope of the professional service agreement, we were going to do the construction piece in-house.
No, basically our process for the PSAs for projects of 2 million or more. If you follow it, we hire them for the design first and then we do this amendment to add the bidding and construction.
So this is.
So this is a typical process.
To some extent, that is just to decide whether you have one.
Yeah.
Design and
Yep.
Grant. Thanks.
But yeah, typically that's how we've been doing it on the bigger projects is get the design done and then, cause then they know what they're designing, you know, and then you can get a better, there's less question marks.
We have a motion and a second regarding the authorization to execute amendment number 2. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item 3D is the 2024 FWTP Treatment Basin Rechaining Project with a 2024 contract.
Andrea, in November of last year, board awarded a contract, Woodruff Construction for rechaining. And this was one of our first 3-year contracts where we awarded a rechaining contract for 1 in 24, 1 in 25, and 1 in 26. And what we're bringing here today is the 2024 portion of that multi-year project. They have completed that work. And we're asking for the board's acceptance of that project, so that piece of the project, so we can start the warranty on that first year's project. There was one small change order on the project to actually remove some work from the contract. But other than that, the project was planned and it's ready to be accepted.
We have a motion to accept the 2024 FWTP Treatment Basin Rechaining Project 2024 contract completed by Woodruff Construction LLC in the amount of $195,877.
So. Second.
Questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3E is the 2024 Well Rehabilitation Project, 2024 contract.
Andrea, this is another example of a 3-year contract. We awarded a contract to Gunning Christensen in November of 2024 to rehabilitate 3 of our radio collectors based on a lump sum 24, 25, and 26. This is 2024 work, which was rehabilitating Moines Water Treatment Plant Development 1. All the work associated with that project is complete. We are here asking for the board to accept the 2024 portion of the project so we can start the warranty on the piece.
Can I have a motion to accept the 2024 Well Rehabilitation Project 2024 contract completed by Lane Christensen Company in the amount of $490,628.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 3F is to request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute change orders for FDTP closed loop cooling system.
Andrea, the closed loop cooling systems was a contract that the board awarded back in August of 2023. The work was done. The system was, the work was completed. The system was placed in service in August of last year. But unfortunately, the new closed loop cooling system wasn't able to remove enough heat from the engine. And so the consultant who we used to design that system had to take another look at it. They've actually recommended that we change the heat exchanger in the engine, install a larger heat exchanger. And we've gotten a price from the contractor to do that work of $98,000. You can see there was a series of smaller change orders kind of throughout the process that totaled about $100,000. This change order is $98,000, which would revise the contract sum to about $1.6 million. There is a comment in here about conversations with the consultant about the heat exchanger and the fact that it needs to be replaced now. A lot of the work associated with the larger heat exchanger would have been cost we would have had anyway. But there is some additional cost, and so we're having conversations with them about possibly cost adjustment on this project or a future project to account for some of the additional costs that we had. Those conversations aren't complete yet, but we would recommend that the board authorize us to execute this change order with the construction contractor so we can move forward and get the larger heat exchanger installed and get the engine up and running. So that's what we're here today is authorize this change order so we can move forward with it.
Can I have a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute change order for FDTP closed loop cooling systems in the additional amount of $98,014?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Is Ivan saying it's a pure design issue, or are they putting any blame on Walden for how they feel?
I haven't heard any blame on all of them. It's a design consideration.
Okay. And it's going back to them for future.
No more questions or discussion. We'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item 3G is the CEO and general manager employment agreement. Because the recommended action is to go into a closed session, I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to move this down the list.
Yeah.
Okay. And jump over into item 3H, which is the ratification of emergency expenditures for lost circulation issues. 2024 PCPS aquifer storage and recovery well BP1 well construction.
That's an awful. We are building an ASR well at the Polk County pumping station, and bid package 1 was drilling the well. And the contractor has run into some challenges in the construction of that well. Basically, they drilled into an area in the formation that is taking water, taking drilling fluid, and they're losing the drilling fluid. And that's accounted for in the contract if they get to a point where they're having to add excess drilling fluid to keep the process working, to keep the cuttings coming to the top of the well like it's supposed to. They can request additional money, which they have, and we've been working through that. But now it's gotten to the point where it's very excessive amount of lost fluid, and they're going to need to try to seal off that area that fluid is flowing into. Instead of just continuing to fight against it, they've actually stopped drilling, and they're going to pack that area of the well with rock, and they're going to seal that with cement, and then they're going to drill back through that plug that they created. This isn't something that happens often, but it happens. When it happens, it's expensive. And so Amy did a very nice job of keeping the board apprised with emails, letting you know what's going on. We did define this as an emergency expense that needed to be authorized prior to this board meeting to keep the project on track and to avoid spending $39,000 and $36,000 a day on downtime. There's no sense in adding that additional cost to something that's already cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we've moved ahead with that. Still the right move, still certainly more cost effective than stopping and moving to a different spot where we might just run into the same problem again. Certainly more cost effective than abandoning the project and trying to build additional treatment plant capacity, which we all know is very expensive. So we're here today to answer any questions that you have about that process and where we are in the process, and then ask for the board to ratify that emergency change here in public meeting. So we can move forward.
So to get things started, I need a motion to authorize ratification of emergency expenditures in the amount of $655,978 for the lost circulation issues associated with the 2024 PCPS Aquifer Storage and Recovery Well, BP1 Well Construction Project. Any discussion?
I don't have any problems with the way that this was handled. I mean, I think that emergencies are emergencies. And I think good decisions were made here. I think the only thing I advise, last meeting, but going forward and having been a part of discussions about CEO spending authority and that sort of thing. I think it has worked pretty well over the years that the CEO have, there's a set amount that CEO can make without bringing it to the board. What that does is, to me, it just, puts a marker out there that the board needs to be a part of the decision-making process. And I think it's worked pretty well, and maybe there's a time where you take a look at that number and decide whether it's appropriate or not, or needs to be raised. But I mean, here's an instance where there was a workaround, there was an emergency made, and there were decisions made, but the board was kept informed the whole way through the process, which is actually the point of having the limitation, is that the board be involved. And so my advice is you kind of keep a limitation, but there are going to be times, rare as this one was, and when it happens, the idea is keep the board.
Do we have any idea if this will be the end of it, or if there will be more of this?
No, we hope that this will be the end of it. But they could get this packed, get through it and run into another zone similar to this before they get to the aquifer. So I'm hopeful that there won't be, but we don't.
And there's no way to test or do anything ahead of time before you do.
Not that I'm aware of, Diane. This is something that we didn't run into on the other ASR wells that we drilled. I heard that Ankeny ran into a similar situation, but less scope on their recent ASR well construction. But just it's a function of exactly where you drill the hole, found a rough spot. So there is no way to know for sure except to keep going.
Well, how, as far as decision making process right now, are we going with like kind of the contractor's recommendation? Like, here's what we do with this situation.
Yeah, there was a meeting and I wasn't here, so Kyle and Lindsay can fill in the blanks or fix anything I say wrong, but there was a meeting with the engineering consultant and the contractor and our staff to talk about options. And while, $600,000 is a lot of money, obviously, it's still less than the other options in terms of trying to develop 300 or 3 million gallons per day of capacity. And so our sense is that we can resolve it for this, and we can be back on track and have our 3 million gallons per day capacity. It adds to the cost, but that's kind of the decision making process. Is they said they thought they could resolve it. This is what it would cost. What would you add to that?
I would just add that, it's basically kind of a fluid situation, because they were dealing with this lost circulation, adding material, then the hole got unstable and actually partially collapsed and their drill bit got stuck. So they got that all out, and then they actually went in and got rid of the material, got their drill bit out of there, and then they surveyed the hole so they could kind of see what they were dealing with, and then this was the recommended path. So there's multiple zones that they need to grout, like Ted had said. So they've gotten 2 of those zones, which are on track what they had anticipated. And so the biggest zone they're getting to now, and we've been having conversations every day with them on progress, and had conversations with them over the weekend as well, and visited the site. So we're monitoring it pretty close.
Well, we have a motion and second for the authorization of ratification. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item 3I is the request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute change order for the Second Avenue reconstruction from University to the Des Moines River.
I apologize. Did we get a first and a second for the last one? Oh.
Yes.
I apologize.
I think I was first. I moved it. Did I move it?
Oh, okay. Never mind. We skipped a line. Let's mess up the lines.
We good?
Good.
Okay.
I think it's to me, this change order, well, first of all, the board authorized us to enter into a reimbursement agreement with the city of Des Moines for work that was going to be completed as part of the city's Second Avenue reconstruction project. That was about a $2.5 million reimbursement for work that was originally included in the city's construction plans for that project. During construction, we determined that another 260 feet of 16-inch diameter main should be replaced. As part of that construction project, we've gotten a bid from the city's contractor, Synergy, to replace that additional 260 feet of 16-inch pipe, $136,294. Interestingly enough, there was an early completion clause in this contract if the contractor had completed it by basically the end of last year, which they weren't able to do. And so some of what $150,000 of what we were originally going to pay was part of that early completion clause. So they're not going to receive that, and so we don't have to pay that. And so actually, even with the additional $136,000, it lowers the contract sum. That's $150,000 that we would have saved, that we wouldn't have had to pay. Now we're going to pay $136,000 now. So anyway, long story short, we're looking for authorization to add $136,000 worth of work. The contract sum current is actually less than original because of that early completion. We're looking for authorization to execute this change.
Can I have a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute change order for Second Avenue reconstruction from University to the Des Moines River in an additional amount of $136,294?
So.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3J is a public hearing. Establishing a public hearing. Thank goodness. I was already like scrolling down and thinking, where's my script? It is a request for permission to establish the date of a public hearing for easement related to the Icon Water Trails project of Des Moines Waterworks Lowhead Dam as the date of the June 2025 board meeting.
Yeah, Andrea, as part of the Icon project, there are going to be some improvements in the vicinity of our Lowhead Dam. There's going to be a portage around that dam, and there's going to need to be access to that portage area so that it can be maintained and cleaned out periodically. Interestingly and fortunately, I guess from my perspective, Polk County is going to be responsible for maintaining that portage area around, but an easement is needed to support access for maintenance and construction, and then ongoing maintenance. So we are proposing to grant an easement for those purposes. Easement would be between Polk County Conservation and Waterworks. And here today, we're just looking for permission to establish the date of that public hearing as the date of the June 2025 board meeting.
Do I have a motion to establish the date of the June 2025 board meeting as the date of public hearing for the Icon Water Trails project easement at the Des Moines Waterworks Lowhead Dam, and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law?
So moved.
Second.
I have a question. Is that Lowhead Dam there functioning for a specific purpose or?
Yeah, those are our flash boards
Okay.
that we put up during low water times to maintain water at our intake and above the gallery. We work very closely with ICON, specifically Kyle. We work very closely with ICON to ensure that what they're doing downstream isn't going to interfere. But that low head dam is going to need to stay there. There's going to need to be some maintenance of that portage around it, and so. Okay.
What did they, it's kind of related, but. What are they doing as far as safety? They've got people going over the dam now that there's encouraging a lot of
That's a
people
real
to use
concern.
this
Yeah,
area.
they've got some fairly significant signage plans to alert canoers and kayakers. And then, of course, they're gonna develop a little more robust portage and keep that maintained. And I don't know if there's anything beyond that on signage and portage.
They're looking right now how much additional signage or what signage, if they need to put larger signs and things like that. Make the public aware of these dams, and then potentially if when the flashboards are up or when the flashboards are down, having changeable signs. So that people on that.
And I mean, I think, and we talked a little bit about this, I think when we consider signage, other than keep off it, I mean, which is important, some education about what this thing is that, you know, when you damage this, you're threatening our water supply. I mean, I think it's just, nobody knows what those things are. And I think it's fascinating when people learn about it, and maybe they take care of it a little more when they know about it. So I would continue to kind of, big and bold signs keep off, but also this is why. Which leads to my other point, and we talked about this before. I think that, as the Park Foundation and Waterworks and everybody works on this, building on Water Curia, there's a huge opportunity there to continue the education that goes on in the park right here at the river with ICON.
Yeah, your education signage for what this is ideally happens at that portage site. So is your more experienced paddlers know that there's a effort underway to get rid of all low head dams. And so why this one has to stay and its purpose and its serving right as they're getting off onto that portage trail would be helpful, meaningful to them.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's a good idea. That's, I think, an opportunity for us.
Yes.
That will not be part of the
No,
ICON
sure.
project.
No, sure.
Yeah.
No, and I get that, but I think there's just a real opportunity there, and there's an opportunity, I think, too, with the Park Foundation. We keep talking about handoff. There's people are gonna be standing there, they're gonna be portaging, they're gonna do whatever. We should be thoughtful about how do we, next time you're out, go to Waterworks Park, do these things and make that handoff.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3K.
We can dispense with the reading of this.
It's in fancy font.
Oh, it is in a fancy font.
Just
be like in what, comic.
Item 3K is the resolution of appreciation for departing board of Waterworks trustee Graham Gillette.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Andrea, I'd like to read this even against Graham Gillette, because I think it's important. Whereas Graham Gillette was appointed to the Board of Waterworks Trustees in February 2011. And whereas Graham Gillette's term as Board of Waterworks trustee member will end effective today. And whereas Mr. Gillette served as chair of the Board of Waterworks Trustees in 2013 to 2016, and from 2021 to 2022. And whereas during his service on the board, Mr. Gillette represented the board throughout the clean water litigation and participated in regional governance negotiations, demonstrated leadership and planning for the region with the approval of new water system infrastructure, including aquifer storage and recovery wells, expansion of the Sailorville Water Treatment Plant, regional pumping stations, including the joint Maffett Lake Booster Station and the Northwest 26th Street Booster Station. Ensured fiscal stewardship and appropriate alignment between the utility and the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation during construction of Phase 1 Park Master Plan improvements, and served as Des Moines Waterworks representative on the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden Board for nearly 10 years. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Waterworks Trustees of the City of Des Moines, Iowa hereby acknowledges with sincere appreciation the contributions made by Graham Gillette to Des Moines Waterworks and the community he has served by entering this resolution of appreciation into the minutes of the board.
Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution as set out above?
So
Second.
You discuss that. The part where, I am not very good at, speaking in appreciation settings as a board chair, but I do want to say a few things as you are leaving us. Because as I came on board, especially as chair, you and I had several conversations guiding me and helping me figure out how to do this. You know, you sit up here and you read the board required actions and you ask for motions and seconds and ask for votes, and if you're me, you mess up public meetings and other things. But there's a lot of work that goes on outside of the meeting and a lot of discussions and considerations. And I appreciate so much how you have helped me to navigate and consider the work that we do as a board here, and protecting the public and our ratepayers in the process. So I do not doubt that I will see you and be talking with you more in the future. So I'm not gonna make this a goodbye
Well, I'm not going
speech. But just wanted to let you know how much I do appreciate the work that you've done here for the utility in all aspects. Do we have this printed up on nice parchment paper or something?
We have a couple of things. We have a small token of appreciation, small but substantial, your fire hydrant.
Looks like it weighs a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
It's, yeah, you can hurt somebody with that if they're attacked in your home.
My wife always sees something like this, this would make a great weapon. Which is odd that that's my wife's first thing whenever she sees something like this. That's my wife.
She's right. in that
That's right.
case. We also have a recognition from the city of Des Moines. In terms of your service on the board. I don't have the nice parchment version of this one in front of me, but you have one.
Yes,
You have what?
we have.
Oh, yeah, we have
Yes.
representatives for you guys that like to share.
Absolutely.
Don't let anybody speak.
All right.
You know, if I'm coming up, you will.
For the record, do we need your name or?
Good afternoon, board. My name is Bill Bluebow. I'm a lab technician. I'm going on 25 years of service at Des Moines Waterworks. And I currently work with the union leadership team. I live in Ankeny, and I'm also a customer, and I drink the tap water. I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the union and our workforce to express our deep appreciation for someone who has truly made a difference, Graham Gillette. Leadership isn't about holding a position or making a decision from a distance. It's about listening, understanding, and acting with empathy. And Graham, you've done that for all of us. When our insurance rates rose dramatically, it had a real painful impact on our employees' take-home pay, many of whom already operate on very tight margins. You didn't just hear their concern, you understood it. And through your leadership, the board helped ease the burden by increasing the amount Waterworks puts in. That made a real difference in the lives of the people who keep this organization running. When our distribution team faced serious staffing challenges, you and Andrea stepped in. You worked directly with the leadership to find solutions because you understood that it had created a bad situation for people doing the difficult work. You've worked to build stronger relationships between the union, leadership, and the board. That work matters. It's laid a foundation of respect, collaboration that we hope will carry forward for years to come. It's clear to all of us that you value the employees. From those who are on the front line with our customers, to those who are called to work in the middle of the night during freezing temperatures to repair main breaks, and everyone else who ensures the water is safe and plentiful. You and Andrea have shown through your words and actions that safety matters, the people matter. So on behalf of the union, thank you, not only to you, but the entire board for the time and commitment you've given. We appreciate your effort to ensure the water system is safe, reliable, and that our workforce is treated with dignity and respect. Graham, your leadership has left a meaningful legacy, and your support for our workforce will not be forgotten. Thank you on behalf of ASME 3861. We wish you the best in all you do in the future.
See now, Bill, you know I'm crying. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it, but you know, I do. Serving on this board has been a great privilege. And I think all of us share an interest in solving problems. And that's one of the great things about serving on this board is that the ability to work with people to solve problems. Well, Bill tried to make me cry, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, I think that type of relationship, working with the union representatives here, working with this board, with the staff to solve problems has been why I enjoy doing this so much and why I would keep doing it if this was about me, because I truly enjoy serving on this board. But as I've told all of you, I think there comes a time where turnover is good in these positions, and I think you bring in new people and new minds, and they look at things through a new lens, and that's a good thing. Well, that time for me has come, and I will miss it very much, and I will miss, and I have to figure out another way to find new problems to solve, which I think I will find ways to do that. But this, I've done a lot of things in public service type activities. This has been one of the most rewarding, and not going to do it. And one that I will miss. And I just appreciate having the opportunity to get to know all of you and work with all of you. And I think maybe we'll figure out a way to continue to do that on some level going forward. I'm not leaving. I'm going to be around.
You're coming back next month.
That's right. I will say that when I come back next month, it'll be virtual. So, but I will be present. But I appreciate the kind words, and I think while I hope I've contributed something here, I feel a little bit like I've got the better end of the deal, that I got more out of it than I gave.
We do have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll also take a moment to point out that our new board member, Emily Kissinger, I believe, is joined us remotely, listening in. She will take a spot here. Next month in June will be her first board meeting. Moving on, we do have, to circle back to, the item 3G, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to go through our information items or if it's more appropriate to,
You can go through the information items, we'll wrap those up so
Okay.
that the meeting can end. That's the closed session.
Okay. So on that note, we'll move on to our information items. The first information item was the water curia presentation, which we moved earlier to this meeting. Item B is the board committee reports, which is just the planning committee for this month.
The planning committee met on the 13th. Ted was not there. He was drinking wine in Cinque Terre, I believe. We had a
Line
great,
somewhere.
we had a great presentation from Mike in the engineering department about the water main replacement. Updates, both recapping projects underway as well as the plans for 2025 and 26. The highlights are in the meeting notes. Learned a lot about prediction around what's going to break. Certain vintages of pipes are more likely to break than others, so really fascinating engineering discussions. In the CRO comments, Kyle commented on the nitrate levels in addition to the ASR well that we discussed. Kyle, can you give us 30 seconds on the CIWW feeder main that we discussed briefly in that meeting? I don't think that's covered in tape.
Yes, there was a 24-inch feeder main out by LP Moon that we had a leak on at the time. We were concerned that the cost of that were going to exceed the CEO's spending authority also. Though as we did more investigative work on that, we were able to find the leak outside of the casing on the opposite side of the street where we didn't have to replace all of 400 feet of casing pipe and others. So we have completed the repairs of that last week, turned the main on this weekend, and the estimated cost is close to around $100,000 versus if we would have had to replace all the casing, would have extended the timeline probably a month and over $500,000 for the repairs. So the best case scenario happened and we didn't get those repairs.
Appreciate the update. That's it for me, Andrew.
Thank you. Item C would be the board membership reports, starting with the Central Iowa Waterworks Board.
The highlights are in your packet. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, which is great. We went through a lot of the accomplishments. I think a lot of the things have been accomplished and it certainly speaks to taking 10 years to get something done because we seem to have well anticipated a lot of things that have come up and it was executed really well thanks to a lot of different people. We have received some awards. Tammy is here. We had AWWA came and did some filming and we will be one of the features at their meeting in July.
11 days.
In 11 days.
Yes, sure.
June, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Not me, sorry.
Yes. And then also in the public interest report for Central Iowa Taxpayer Consideration.
Yes, and Ted, along with Jason Mum and, oh, I can't remember her name, Melanie, have published a paper about the creation of Central Iowa Waterworks that, and where was it published? It was published.
It was in the journal, the AWWA journal, and it was primarily about the financial considerations that Jason helped us with, not about the whole thing, but it's nice recognition of CWW, kind of the beginning.
So far, so good. We have things happen, but I think the overall plan is going as expected as we look to our next plants. Where we're going to be getting our water and also our best practices committee where we're going to be looking at what we can do to promote conservation. I don't have anything else, but I'm happy to take questions. And like I said, Tammy's here, so she can.
I appreciate that update on the best practices committee and how we can continue to move forward with thinking about the resource. I'm noticing in the notes that the weighted vote allocation was updated. Can you share what that looked like or what that was or?
I can't, can you, it was expected, it doesn't seem that it's controversial or.
No, I mean, did it change anything or was it just?
Chair and trustees, no, it very marginally wasn't statistically significant at all on what happened with the weighted vote changes. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Fantastic. All right, are there any questions or discussion for Diane or Tammy? Then our next is Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation. I can share on that. I think the main takeaways from the Park Foundation is that the executive director, Chris Birch, continues to kind of get some steam under him as he moves along into the concert season, really focusing on fulfilling expectations with the donor wall and other contracts that were entered into previously. And then also identifying sponsors and donors, both past and present, to call on and continue to get the Park Foundation's finances in order. I'm assuming that you can see the additional information that was submitted with their notes of our April board meeting. They've added some additional programming in effort to diversify their revenue. And we're looking forward to see how the end of this concert season balances the Park Foundation. I guess is the way to say that.
I don't have anything to add.
Right, any questions or discussion regarding the Park Foundation? Then we are on to item D.
That's me. We've talked about a lot of the happenings, the current events here with the ASR and the repair of the transmission unit and some other things, but I do want to talk a little bit about nitrate concentrations. Their nitrates are high. I know we talked about it a little bit at the planning committee meeting. But today in the Raccoon River, 15.98 milligrams per liter. The Des Moines River is 11.14 milligrams per liter, which creates challenges for Nathan and his team, especially given that there's detectable microsystem in the Des Moines River, and there has been now for several days. It's been a real balancing act trying to figure out which river to take water from. Nathan shared in his update last week that they're using the Des Moines to dilute the Raccoon River nitrates down and using the Raccoon to dilute the toxins in the Des Moines down, and just sort of trying to find balance there where we can produce the water that we need. That's been manageable here over the last couple of weeks because it's been somewhat cool and rainy, a lot rainy. I had 3 inches of water in my gauge when I got home, but demand is likely to go up as it warms up here through the week, and it's likely less rain in the next few days. So it will be a challenging time to be sure. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I also wanted to point out in the safety update, Dylan's given us a quick update on our learning management system. You've talked a lot about safety in the last 2 or 3 years. Randy mentioned it, Bill mentioned it. And you know, we do a lot of training. We haven't necessarily tracked our training as effectively as we needed to. This learning management system for the first time is going to bring safety training and tracking into this platform and allow us to ensure that people are getting the training that they need and making sure that we keep track of that's what we need to do. So you can see the number of touches we've had with that new safety management learning management system there in the memo that Dylan provided, and that should help us ensure that we stay on the right track here with all of our safety training across the organization. And then the last thing I would mention is that We did have a couple of folks, Amy and Melissa Walker went to DC on the partnership fly-in and had a lot of good meetings with Congress people, Zach Nunn and Ernst both, they were able to meet with in person. And then staffers from some of the other senators and representatives in DC, and there's a nice overview of the meetings that they had and the conversations they had, and kind of the message that they delivered and the asks that they had. When they went to DC. So a good trip, overall valuable to the organization, and hopefully will make a difference on several fronts. So.
Any questions or discussion on items texture? Not hearing any. Any discussions or conversations on those utility updates for safety or the outreach? Okay. Then at this time, we're going to jump back to item 3G. Which is the CEO and General Manager Employment Agreement. I am looking for a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 21.9 to discuss strategy and matters relating to employment conditions of employees of the governmental body who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement under Chapter 20, Iowa Code 622.10 to receive legal advice from legal counsel related to the negotiation of the CEO contract, and Iowa Code 21.51C and Iowa Code 22.765 to review a draft of the contract.
So moved. Second. I have a question. We don't expect to come out of this and take any action today.
That depends on the discussion in the closed session.
What is the possible action?
The possible action would be to approve a form of contract.
So that's
to
possible.
Propose. That is a possibility depending on what the board wants to do.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
But we would do that in open session.
I got you.
Whether anybody's here or not is a different question.
Possible we come out and approve it.
Yes, okay, awesome.
With that, we have a motion and a second. Do we need a
Roll
vote, roll call vote for,
Ms. Bolton,
yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Ms. Munts.
Yes. Feel free to